Oh, hi, Thomas. Here we are again. Can
How
you
are you,
hear?
Neil?
Yeah. So
I
this
can hear you nice and clear.
Megaliths Mysteries Project number 3.
Already?
Already, yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? Feels like we've just started. So just to make it clear, this is the one I'm doing on my channel, Neil McDonald's Megalithic Tours. So please, anybody do click subscribe because I'm trying to build my channel up. One day I might even catch Thomas, but I doubt it. But so if you could do that, would be fantastic. And you'll be putting this on your playlist on yours as well.
Yeah. So
So
it bounces.
We'll
It's
both build a
ping pong back and forth.
ping pong, yeah. And this one's the one that's going on mine, but and I'll build the playlist up as well. So that's that. Yes, please do subscribe. Thanks for those people who've already said. There's 4 people already said go on the waiting list for the tour, which is fantastic. I haven't managed to email them personally back, but I will this week. So that's great. That's a good start. That's our tour in September. Anybody else wants to go on the waiting list, just let me know. Okay, that's great. So we usually start off with like a piece of relevant news for the time, so I'll start off with mine. Do you want to go first? Yeah, you go first, and then I'll come in later.
Yeah, there was a Scientific America came up with a story last week, although I read it in an Irish website called gript.ie, which is actually quite a cynical, no, it's not given to kind of sensationalism news website. And there was a project in the United States called the Breakthrough Listen Project. And they were very similar to SETI. Rather than sending a signal out, they were just listening. And I think the system works by doing general sweeps of certain areas of the universe, rather than SETI, I think, listens in specific spots for a time. Nothing happens, moved on to another spot in search of alien signals, basically. And amazingly, in 2019, they didn't release the story until now, but they discovered or picked up a signal from a very nearby star, 4.3 light years, called Proxima Centauri, which it has a cluster of planets in its habitable zone, much bigger than the Earth. But in the what they call the habitable zone by Earth standards, there's water and other climatic abilities, situational abilities to survive life. Now, the signal they've received has not been debunked yet. They're pretty convinced it is from an intelligent source. And what's interesting about it is it seems to be like a carrier wave. There's no signal inside it, or at least nothing that can be detected yet, or we haven't found it yet. But it's definitely a broadcast signal of some kind that was fired in our direction. So it brings up all kinds of intriguing things that this alien civilization may have picked up a signal from us and decided to send one back. Now, traveling by the speed of light, it takes 4.5 years to get there. So a signal, if they had heard something, they only had to hear it 4.5 years ago to pick it up. But until we don't have anything, the current spaceships we have couldn't get there for 16,000 years with the current systems we have. But it's fascinating to hear. There's been so much UFO stuff, which we've been talking about in the last show, and lots of sort of disclosure from the U.S. Navy in particular. And you had an retired Israeli official saying that there's been contact. They've known about these signals and stuff for a while, but they kept it quiet, probably because they wanted to make sure they weren't like when they discovered quasars in the 1960s, because quasars have a regular pulse. They thought that was a beacon. But what happens is a quasar is a star that emits a certain frequency, and another star goes in front of it, and it sounds like it's beep, beep, beep. So that they discovered that was.
So they're kind of investigating it then, really.
Yeah, and they've ruled out on this one from the Breakthrough Listen Project. They've ruled out everything so far, and they've gone on record and said yes. And it was in Scientific America, which is kind of a prestigious journal. So they've gone on record as saying it appears to be, from what they can tell, an intelligent source transmitting towards Earth. So that's
amazing.
Quite big, but also it should be the biggest story in the world. And it's funny how all these, like all the UFO sightings last year, there were all of the U.S. Navy stuff. the mainstream media reported like, oh, more alien stuff. It's stuff so funny. It's very strange.
Crazy, isn't it? Isn't it mad? Well, that is amazing, isn't it? Especially after what we were saying last week as well with the all the lights and everything. I think they say this should be something everybody's talking about because it's you know it's physical, well, not physical fact, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah. And you know, up until about 5 years, 4 or 5 years ago, if you mentioned anything to do with UFOs, you were laughed at. And
Yeah,
you know, even if you had like the mentality we have towards it, like it's something to do, it's a very complex subject, not necessarily
yeah,
alien. You were still mocked, oh, little green man, is Elvis coming back in a spaceship, all this kind of nonsense.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then the last 2 years, ever since the Anuma Uma, the strange object that came into the solar system from a weird angle above, and then made a right angle turn, which some
Yeah.
people kind of claim outgassing, which is when gas is fired out of the side of it. As it gets to the sun, gases are released, so it really pushes it like a like a booster engine. But it wouldn't have pushed at the angle this thing had been pushed at. It was a hard turn and very fast hard turn. So it was like propulsion. And so and then right after that, they had the massive sighting on the west coast of Ireland, and then there's been non-stop ever since. It's reported very nonchalantly by the media, as if they're either, you know, you have to be careful that we could be getting done here for something like Project Bluebeam, a fake alien thing.
Yeah.
You have to be careful, but I think the tone of the media about the whole thing is so strange.
Wasn't Trump supposed to be coming out with releasing some documents at some point?
Well, he did. That was the U.S. That was the U.S. Navy done. He gave permission for that to be released. But remarkable footage of just astounding things, you know, picked up on Air Force jet cameras,
Yeah.
and I mean they're just incredible. These things moving at unbelievable speeds and making again hard right turns, and there they are, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, so there's definitely I don't I honestly believe these unidentified aerial phenomena, if you want to call them something other than UFOs. I definitely think that they don't even know what they are. I think they've been as mysterious to the military and the government as anyone else.
It must be crazy if you just if you're in the Navy and you suddenly see something out at sea like that, and you have no idea what it is, and you can't really speak of it. So they
I
don't
was
know any better than we do, really, do they?
I was friends with a guy called Nick. He was an English chap who lived here in Ireland. He was married to an Irish lady. He passed away now, sadly. He worked for BP on oil tankers going around the world back in the day, back in the 70s when he was still working. And he would tell me he would see weird things all the time in the middle of the Pacific, like sometimes huge lights moving at enormous speed under the ocean. You know, at night you look down and you see this thing moving under the ocean at incredible speeds. And you know, he says your awareness is hyper in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Your awareness is very, very hyper uh, attenuated. For instance, if there's an island 20 miles away, you can smell the tropical flowers on it because all your senses are elevated in every way. You know, blown down wind. But he says, but this thing was not like an imagination. Him and another guy saw it, a hard, bright light moving under the ocean, looking past under the oil tanker at high speed into the distance. So strange stuff out there.
Yeah, yeah. And it seems to be building.
Yeah.
So my thing, I'll move on to. I thought I'd go with the Jupiter Saturn alignment that we've just experienced.
Yeah.
It's
Well, it's very beautiful, yeah.
because
It,
it ties in really to what we're doing here very much, the our Megaliths and Mysteries Project. Um, so for anybody who doesn't know, in the west sky just recently, over the last few days, we've had an alignment of Saturn and Jupiter. So as you looked at it, all you would see was a star. It's said to be like the star of Bethlehem, really. It's up in the western sky at a low level. And uh, what it's supposed to be. I'm not quite sure how often, but people I've been told about every 400 years you get something like this, but it's never. This is the only time it's really been on the winter solstice, which makes it really quite amazing, to be honest with you. And that couldn't really be more prescient to our times. If you look at what the planets represent, because and also because how can I put this? Tier, we went into England. We went into Tier 4 in London on the day before the winter solstice. So that was Saturnalia. So somebody has picked the day of the celebration of Saturnalia, just as Saturn appears dominant in the sky to put us into restriction. And what does Saturn represent? Well, limitation, restriction, boundaries. In other words, lockdown. But Saturn is 9 times bigger than the Earth. So this is a big control mechanism. If you believe that sort of the Emerald Tablet of Hermes, which I think shows a lot of truth, that as above, above, so below, for the workings of the one thing, blah 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 blah. It shows, and I'm sure somebody must believe that. Is it a coincidence that they put us into the biggest lockdown on Saturnalia as Saturn arrives before the winter solstice? Can't be, can it?
Well, the thing is, if the old pagan priests would have definitely have seen these auguries, these portents as very powerful ways, that there would have been no reason for it. I mean, there would have been a reason for it. Now, Saturn is Chronos, which is also time. When you say restriction, it means you only have so much time. That's why Saturn is portrayed in classical art as eating babies or babies dying, because that doesn't mean it's human sacrifice. It's telling the moment you're born, you are doomed to die. That's what Saturn means in the archetypal sense. Chronos. Jupiter is Jove, the god of so it's power, the power force, and time doing a dance in the western sky. Now that's so power, we're being locked down for a certain time, with, like I said, restrictions, demarcation, held in. At the same time, and this you will find this personally interesting, Neil. The last time this happened was, I believe, in 1260. Don't quote me on that. I think 1260. The biggest event in the Western world at that time was the Albigensian Crusade.
I was thinking, that was ended in sort of 12.
In the middle of the biggest fighting, and there's some of the main sieges of cities like Lyon and so on. And so, the cathartic here, quite literally, that thing has come back too.
I'd love to go through that at some point as well and have a talk about the whole thing, because Saturn, I was saying, is the great Malfeas, so it's the restriction. But Jupiter, being the great Benefice, is like expansion and growth and freedom and long distance travel. So you've got Saturn saying stop, restrict, and then Jupiter, which is much even bigger than Saturn, comes in the way and says, well, just a minute. No, I'm not having that. I'm going to have growth and expansion and freedom and long distance travel, which that's because I do tours. That's fantastic, isn't it?
I found the experience of the event itself at its peak quite beautiful. There was a beautiful energy in the air, even though you couldn't see it as usual. We're all clouded up here, but it was a beautiful energy. I felt that I remember, like, I was watching online the moment where they reached our nearest point of conjunction, and it was just a very gentle, very strong feeling of creative energy came through.
It's like a movement, isn't it? A wave shift.
It didn't feel sinister at all. Quite the opposite. It felt almost like melancholy, in the best kind of way.
Yeah, it's good because, I mean, the very fact that it was the day and it moved into the winter solstice. So we're saying not only has Jupiter joined in, but also it's at the beginning of the new year for the longest night as well. Yeah. So I just see this very, as a very positive thing, especially what we're doing in trying to look positive, to put our energies. So we're actually putting our energies on the Jupiter side rather than the Mars side, and let's concentrate on freedom and expansion and getting on with stuff, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, force the force of things, getting the stuff done, and all these Brexit talks are all happening at the same time as all this, and that's
the Brexit's ended, hasn't it?
Yeah, but there's still these bloody talks they're having with the EU about like the exit deals and stuff like that. It's all nonsense.
Has it not finished now from the deal of last night?
Mate, did it go down? I don't know if it went down last night. That was the
You were
last I read.
enjoying yourself, having a boring life, you say. I'm going to listen to the news. No, I've listened to talk radio and I was saying that
Every night
we
this
finally
week.
come to an agreement on the last day possible. So that'll take months for people to go through the red tape. I'm sick of Brexit. You know, I can't be bothered with it anymore. It's what will be now. The days.
I was out partying last night and every bloody night this week nearly, and someone had said that to me. So I didn't know it ended. So yeah, well there you go. I'm sick of hearing about it too.
Yeah, yeah. So move on. There's one thing I will say though that there was a message left that we were maybe a little bit naive in our understandings of conspiracy. Can I say that word?
Even what sense? I'd be interested to know because I've gone through the whole gambit of that.
Yeah.
What sense do they say? What sense?
Maybe a little naive in our positivity, should we say?
But we don't have a doom thing for it, like
yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm old enough to know that I've been through all the big conspiracies, and they're never as bad as what they're made out to be in the end. And I also know
as powerful as they think they are they?
And there's also I don't give the establishment the power of thinking that they have this amazing power.
Exactly,
a lot of it has to do with like I'm not going, even if they did have these plans, I'm going to laugh at them. And secondly, there's also another aspect to it as well, is that the doom itself, the thing of being doom laden with conspiracies becomes a drug for some. I'm not saying this person is like this. I'm just saying it can become a drug for some people. And I know people who have actually seen them addicted to conspiracies one after the next. So you have to be careful
when you go to see a horror film and you get that adrenaline. You just want the next one and the next one. But I studied conspiracies in depth for God so many years, and I used to give talks on it. And for people who don't know, people from Thomas's side, I've been running a conference every year called the Mysterious Earth Conference in Preston in Lancashire. And one year we put the whole conference over, and we had some really good speakers, the best speakers, just on conspiracies, just to get right in there. You know, so we have covered this in great depth. It's just, to me now, I think the energies have to be put onto, because I mean, if you ever looked at my tarot series on my channel, it'll explain why. But I really believe that if you've got to put your energies now onto what you want to see happen, because if you put your energies into criticism and the negative side of it, you're asking that. You're encouraging that, you're giving that your energies to manifest. So we don't. There you go.
When I was living in New York in the 80s and part of like a cool scene, music scene there, and kind of culture scene there in the Lower East Side, we used to talk about conspiracies all the time. It was more like historical what if. We talk about things like the Kennedy or the Kennedys and the murders of the Pope John Paul II. A lot of things we talked about, but there was an attitude I thought was much healthier back then. It was more of a case of we didn't necessarily believe it entirely. Yes, we knew it was true, but even if it was true, there's nothing you can do about it. So the attitude is that you talk about it, you understand it, and then you get on with your life. Now, what happened from the late 90s on, and particularly after 2001, so many people, quite rightly after September 11th, became wrapped up in conspiracies too deep, I think, far too deeply, and to the point where it was doesn't mean these things aren't true, doesn't mean these things don't happen or won't happen, but you can only take care of your own individual life. And no matter what happens with this stuff, maybe it's naive, but I'd rather be. I mean, until they're dragging me out the door with chains on me, I think I can afford naivety.
Yeah, because I mean, just because an organization, and we do understand there are these powerful organizations, decide that they're going to do step one, step two, step three, doesn't mean they've got the power or the capability of pulling it off, does it? It's just.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was talking to someone yesterday about Klaus Schwab, and this person studied him in depth, and he said this guy is just a buffoon when you really get down, a buffoon with money and people listen to him. He goes, at the end of the day, he's not this, it's just basically like the rest of these utopian psychotics. They eventually, they get their attention for a little while. People pay, indulge them. They get a bit of press, and then you vanish and never hear from them ever again. And that's why, my friend said something last night, and he was right that they have to change the agenda, the UN Agenda 21 to UN Agenda 40, because nothing done. They got it all
Well,
failed.
yeah.
So
If they were that, or if they were that powerful, they'd have done it by now, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
I'll give you
So
just.
they're incompetent. They can't even do things properly, like get proper test rolled out and stuff like that. But it's
Oh.
how can they build a utopian planet?
Yeah, I know what I'm going to do. Yeah, I'm going to build a. It all started off, just as a starter though, from this book by Voldemort. Have you come across that one?
I've seen it, but I haven't read it.
Well, I'll just read you one paragraph, right? Just to just as a starter for anybody, this is like the first thing of the whole subject, right? In here, this was Club of Rose back in 1991, an animal. And it's meetings from, it's a group of people from many, many different countries, very, very powerful people. And they kind of decide what they're going to set the agenda, and the agenda's passed down. There's just one paragraph here, which many people might have heard before. Well, just to, as a way in, it's called "The Common Enemy of Humanity is Man." Right. I'll just read the paragraph. It says, "In search for a new enemy to unite us." Get that, because it puts the rest of the paragraph into significance. In search of a new enemy to unite us, we suggested that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill.
Yeah.
In the totality, I need glasses, and in the interactions, these phenomena constitute a common threat which demands the solidarity of all people. But in designing them as the enemy, we fall into the trap about which we have already warned, namely making symptoms from causes. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and only through changed attitudes and behavior can they be overcome. The real enemy then of humanity is itself. So the common enemy of humanity is man, and now we're walking around with masks on because we're our own enemy. So
you have kids
like
kids locking themselves in their room because they've read or seen Greta Thunberg's video or read her book, and they're all terrified.
And it can all be taken back to that decision. We're going to decide that we haven't got enough proper wars between ourselves, so we'll have to find another enemy. I know what we'll do. We'll make enemy his own. We'll make man his own enemy, and in that way we can control them.
And so, how soon that happened? Right after the Berlin Wall fell, right, like a year later, they were already looking for a new communism to fight. A new Russia.
Yeah. There wasn't enough. You're a bit quiet.
We weren't allowed to live in peace and prosperity. We had to have, the shite scared out of us somehow.
Have you got a turnable? You got a bit quiet.
Can you hear me now?
That's again. Speak.
1, 2, 3, 4. Hello.
Yeah, you're quiet. I can hear you. It's just.
There's a volume thing. Hold on. I'm looking for a volume. That's a bit weird. Yeah.
I can edit it up on. I'll put it up on editing.
It shouldn't have went low like that. How about this? Is that better?
Oh yes, a lot better.
Okay. Yeah. Now I see why the cat moved.
Was he a cat?
Yeah.
It was a catastrophe. Oh no. All right, fair enough. What were we saying? I can't remember what we're saying now.
About they had to pick an enemy. The enemy is man, and after the Cold War collapsed, they wasted no time. We weren't allowed to enjoy our world, and immediately had to create enemies for us to be feared.
Yeah, and how was that? I mean, it's amazing to think that has gone through the climate change situation right up to now, where we're literally frightened of each other on the streets because we're our own worst enemy. they've really kept to the script there. You got to give them that credit anyway.
Yeah.
Should we move on to megaliths and leave all this behind?
Yeah. But it's still interesting though because it's the reason why we can't visit them.
Well, that's true, yeah. Oh, and by the way, should I say this or not? Uh, apparently, Castle Rigstone Circle at the solstice in the morning for the sunrise was absolutely wonderful. Apparently, there must have been about 100 people there drumming and cheering, and it was apparently a wonderful. Of course, I couldn't go because I'm in the wrong tier, but
Yeah.
apparently it was fantastic.
A chap there sent me a photograph of it. He was out there.
I
Yeah, it
bet
looked
he did, yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. So I might put one. I'll see if I can get hold of one and I'll put it up as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. What should we move on to next?
Well, one of the things I'd like to talk about is that I've had and you've had strange experiences at megalithic sites that were sort of like what you'd call Fortean or just strange events.
Mm,
And how this ties into why, particularly in England more than anywhere else, it seems to have happened that Christian churches are built upon ancient megalithic sites or on ancient sacred
mm,
sites.
yeah. I mean, the strange experiences.
Yeah, I'll
Well, there's
give you one.
supernatural experiences and various things. I can tell you a funny one, an amazing one to start it off. We went down to there was a group, a pagan group for the British into British mysteries, and they were so it was like the Mabinogion and bloody all this sort of thing, and they were the leaders of this group. There's four of us went up to Swinside for an equinox. It's good few years ago now, and there was one of the guys was representing Bran, Bran the Blessed. So and see, with the head and that. And one of the women who was in charge, she was the goddess, the horse goddess was her line. That's what she concentrated on. So she was Epona and Rihanna. So we went up and we stood in the circle. And we decided to do a little bit of a meditation thing. So we took one of the four corners, one of the north, south, east, and west each, and it was led by Rihanna. We all closed our eyes and we meditated, and then she led the meditation. And when we opened our eyes, white horse standing in the middle of the stone circle. They must have wanted. I couldn't believe it. It was like wow, and because it was being run by the meditation was run by Rihanna. Imagine that.
That's a fantastic one. One time I went to Avebury with a friend from Yeovil in Somerset, and it was a fair old drive, and she was driving. We were a gang of us in the car, and we got into the house in Yeovil, and we were all talking about like, oh, we're excited about going to see Avebury and all, or this and the other. The car had an electronic ignition, so you had to have the key in there to start it. There was no other way to start it. When we arrived at Avebury and the car was being parked at the car park there near the bookshop, the one that lets you into the village,
Yeah.
the she went to pull the key out of the ignition in the car, and there was no key in the
Oh no.
and she called her husband back in Yeovil, and they're very good friends of mine, and the key was on the kitchen table in the house. So the car had driven whatever it was, 40 odd miles without a key in the
Wow.
ignition going by itself.
That blows your brain, doesn't it? How the
And
hell?
and the engine went off while she was thinking about it. Like she went to and it went off.
When it became conscious.
It was like she was so excited and buzzing about going, the gang was going to Avebury that the car start. She somehow made a link with the car ignition and made it start up by itself. And
Wow.
just amazing. And and they had so the keys had to be brought all the way back from Yeovil. Another one was also at Avebury. There was a seagull that was circling overhead, and just the one seagull circling overhead. And as I went down the avenue over the hill towards Silbury and then up to West Kennet Longbarrow, like a vulture in the old Wild West movies, the same seagull followed me, and that's a good bit. That's a long way from the sea. There,
Wow.
followed me
Yeah, it is, yeah.
all the way, circled over my head all the way along the whole thing. Like so, another animal spirit thing, like what you had with the
Yeah,
horse. Incredible, it's just incredible.
yeah.
But
So I don't get these days. I don't get as many. So I mean, the first time I went into it, my first, I think Long Leg was the first one, wasn't it? When I went in, I could feel goosebumps. It was the likes. That's just what they call the energy, isn't it? You can feel that electric energy, and I think, and I don't really. I still do feel that, but usually because I'm working, I'm thinking
yeah,
about the timetable in my head and the timings and the next where the hotel will be on, bloody all these things. So I don't you see, but lots of people on the tours they always reporting amazing things. But I can tell you one which is a bit weird, but I don't want people to think I'm totally nuts. But up in I'll tell you one of the most lively sites I go to is Callanish,
yeah,
up on the Isle of Lewis. Um, I meditated on one of the stones there because everybody else had gone into the cafe for well, for whatever, for a drink, and I just tried to think about the past and what went on at the stones because it's always the big question, isn't it? And I just saw because there's a processional way coming out of Callanish, and I saw a group walking in a. It was all in my mind. It was so clear, and there was girls with flowers in their hair, jumping and dancing and clapping. And then when I saw it, it's what just stopped like that. It shocked me, but it was so real to me. So that's one um, strange experience. Well, not
like
strange.
psychometry that was. You saw the memory in the rock or something.
Yeah, it was a beautiful experience. It really was. I'll never forget it. It was fantastic. I think we pick up these, don't we, when we these
Yeah,
these energies when if we try dowsing and I think it's not. It depends what you think. It's probably a bit of both, but whether they picked the sites because of the electrical energy there, maybe coming through uh, from the Earth's crust, or maybe the energies are built because of the human presence
yeah,
there, and because of the any rituals, anything, or human activity that have been there, or a mixture of both. But
yeah,
dowsing works, doesn't it? I mean, we've done it. It's
yeah. I've done it with you and both me and Maria Wheatley, and there's no doubt
yeah,
about
yeah. Well,
it.
Maria's she's the master,
Queen.
really, isn't she?
But I had one more strange and very frightening experience I had at Megalith. That I was actually with Maria Wheatley and James Quaggart. Was in Sardinia, and we went to this site. And don't ask me the name of it. It was one of those not a Nuragic tower, but it was one of the Nuragis that was like the horn shaped sort of
Oh, the giant's
enclosure.
graves.
Yeah, like Giant's Grave, one of them
Yeah.
types. It looks, but this one was really in the middle of nowhere, up in the
Mm.
mountains, in a really remote, inhospitable area. I was amazed we even found it. It took us ages to find it, and the locals around there in Sardinia will tell you that there's still Satanism goes on up these places. They call it Satanism. I don't, but like black magic or black masses or whatever. When we got up to this site, we are just looking around doing our thing, and there was all bones of a cow all around the front of the
Ugh.
opening of the giant's grave, and where they all have a little door at the front,
Yeah.
and the bones looked like they had been up there about 4 or 5 years, so they weren't like ancient and they weren't new. And I just picked the horns of the young bull, and put them up on the top, just laid them there. Then I went around to the back of the enclosure in the back chamber, and I'm sitting there just like here I just enjoying the experience of being in the middle of Sardinia in a very remote area, just being grateful for the fact that I to experience this experience in my life, to have gotten to a place like this and found this remarkable thing. And you know what Sardinian mountains are like? They're impossible to walk on. Everything is a stone that size. It's like
Yeah,
bowling.
yeah,
The country made up of bowling balls, made of granite,
yeah.
and
That's what we put it. Yeah, yeah. I don't
yeah,
know what we go pile the
and
balls.
you can't walk, and they're covered in moss and everything. And I'm sitting there, just doing my thing, and suddenly I had this feeling of my life being drained out of the end of my foot, like like someone had taken my very soul and pulled it out through my feet at the bottom, and
Oh,
it felt dreadful,
good God.
and it was a horrific experience. And went back to the hotel, and when I was in the hotel, I was having these dizzy spells, and I thought I had a really bad flu or something like that. And it was no, it didn't at all. I wasn't coughing or anything like that. And so I went to try to get a few hours sleep, and I just couldn't. It was just, I felt like my life energy was being taken from me. So I put my clothes back on, went down to a store across the street, and bought 4 or 5 bags of salt, sea salt. The bags were about this size from
Yeah.
the grocery store, and I took them up into the room and I filled the bath full of water, and just put the salt in there and poured the salt over me for about a half an hour straight. The salt water, and yes, of course, I started to feel very good after a while, but I was very left very fatigued and tired from it. Although that sensation of being assaulted was gone. I write all about it in my book Sorcery, about the experience, and this megalith was in the middle of nowhere for a reason, because it was definitely being used by some
Mm.
kind of black cult, dark cult, if not now, in the far past.
If
Well,
something had been brought into our manifestation and you'd encountered it.
yeah, there was an entity that was left there or something. Well, we know that like the island, the mafia are very, very big still.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah,
That
Vendetta. Yeah.
that's what a lot of people that don't understand, that the Sicilian, the Sardinian, and lower southern Italian mafia are also in a cult group called La Costa Nostra, and a part of the occult part of it is to things like their blasphemies against Christianity in order to build up energies. There's a thing called the burning of the saints. If it's a kind of a Freemasonic type thing within them, and people don't, so it could have been something like that. But whatever it was, it was dark, and it was quite frightening. And I've made a point of never going to that place ever again. I don't, but it's difficult to get to. You practically have to climb a mountain to get to it. But I never want to go back to it.
Yeah. Bloody hell. That's amazing. I mean, they are they're quite amazing old giants' graves, aren't they? They're a
Yeah,
one-off. Corsica has the same really strange energy.
yeah. It's hard to describe. Every megalith in Sardinia is intense. Uh,
Yeah,
so the whole island is intense, but the megaliths and the Nuragic towers, there's something there's one of those, there's a big one of those towers in one of the parks there, and you can walk up the spiral staircase to the top, and the energy in the place is like, wow, it's like really intense.
is that the
It's
place
not
where
like
they have a Bronze Age well?
that's the one, yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
know
the
the one
one,
you
yeah.
mean. Yeah, I just can't remember the name of it. Yeah, it's quite incredible, beautiful place. And that
And
well
there's
is,
also
but the well was cut, and it's
yeah,
down below because it's a hot country, isn't it? But and it's done in the Bronze Age, and it's cut perfectly fine. All the masonry, how the before they had tools, it's like oh,
yeah. That's it's called the San
that's yeah,
Cristino.
that's it.
Now that is like something from ancient Egypt in terms of like its geometric perfection.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's another place in Sardinia called I think it's called the Casa de Janus, or the Domus de Janus, meaning the house of
Yeah,
the house of it. It's the one that's all put into a kind of a rock on the side of it, on the side of a plateau, and it has deep rock cuttings inside it. And on one side is a big opening, and beside it is all these carved little heads of these strange alien-like beings, like dozens of them, all around the big hole. And inside the big hole is a ritual bath. It's like really, really spooky and interesting, and so different than anything else in the rest of Europe.
well, that's amazing, isn't it? Because every island seems to have its own particular
Yeah,
type
quiet.
of thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's a fantastic thing about the Mediterranean. You can go and discover one particular type of structure, and then you go to another place, and that culture, while similar, is developed in a different direction.
Like Malta couldn't be more different from Sardinia.
From anywhere in the world, really. Yeah.
And it's at what's it, a couple of 100 miles away, 200 or 300 miles away.
And then you've got Menorca, which is fantastic and totally different again.
I haven't been. I've never been to Sardinia. I've been to Sardinia, or not Sardinia. Corsica is quite remarkable.
It is, yeah. We took the ferry across from. The first time I did a Sardinia tour, it was a Sardinia Corsica tour. I learnt my lesson not to do that because they just decide overnight whether they're going to bother running the ferry or not. So I was stuck there thinking, oh no, they cancelled the ferry. I think if we don't get back, everybody will miss the flights. The car I hired was from Sardinia, and I was on Corsica, so that would be late back. And there's so many things with no flight. The hotel was gone. So oh my god! But they said there was the weather was so bad. There's no way they could run the ferry. But right opposite, but I said to the people, we'll go down anyway. We'll have a look. Right opposite on the quay, there's another ferry company, the Moby ferry. And I went across and said, have you got any ferries? Oh, yeah, no problem. So we just paid again and went on another ferry. So I think they just get up in the morning and make a decision, you know. But anyway, that's a quick mistake. That was another strange thing that happened. Where were we? Yeah. Oh, energies at sites, of course, yeah.
The dowsing thing. Now, I've done that both you and Maria, and I'd never done it before that. And there's what's interesting that they seem to detect buried stones. You know, that's I remember when we were up at Castle Rig. You said I was probably there was either a circle once there or else it's buried under the.
Yeah. And, there was the ones just in the sorry.
The rods jumped at that point. They
yeah.
didn't just. There was literally I could feel like a jolt.
Yeah, it really, really works, doesn't it? Because there's a Castle Rig, there's the main circle, and there was another circle where there's now a standing stone near it, which had been moved, and that was I think it was Stukely, probably Stukely, in about 1925. He maybe earlier. He drew this other circle, another one further near the road, so you can go up and you can and it's on that one of those videos we did, and you can douse out the circle because the perimeter is. I mean, it's absolutely still they're alive. You walk up with your dowsing rods and dump, and you can mark the circle round, and then you can go around and mark where all the post holes are in the stone, and you can reconstruct the stone circle just from dowsing. Yeah. I used to take for a while, for a few years. It was the school, the grammar school in Skipton, and I used to take the kids out in the minibus for a day because I knew one of the teachers. And I used to give them the rod to tell them what dowsing is. And no, there's no way that'll happen. No way. It works. Yeah, with the real scientific brained ones, though, it wouldn't work for them. Only people who didn't. I never said that. Maybe not. It was a bit more discriminate than that. But indiscriminate, just like, wow, it really does work.
Yeah, you have to be open to it. You have to be open. Yeah. I like all things. But
it worked. Time and time again, you know, it's.
Do you remember a few years ago that Anthony Murphy from Megalithic Ireland and some other guy had discovered using a drone after a hot summer all these new structures all around Newgrange, vast amount of circles and massive things under the crops have been quote and the drones have seen them from at low light. I spoke to people and they said anyone who was ever dowsed Bruna Boyne around there will tell you that they always knew those things were there just from the dowsing.
I can believe it, yeah. There's so much, isn't there? There is so much stuff. And the energies are, well, they're definitely present, aren't they? And you talked about why you end up getting Christian churches on top of those sites. I can name. If anybody's been to see the Rudston Monolith, which is the tallest standing stone in Britain, absolutely massive, about 25 feet right in the middle of the churchyard, bigger than the church, incredible. And there was a stone circle round the around the church. There's only one stone left now, and I can name quite a few similar experiences where the church has been built right on the site. So the question is whether it was a way to kill off the old ways or an extension of the old ways. I think more of an extension.
It's a tricky one because a lot of them, like what's that one down near Bath, the one with the red stones, not near Bath, near Bristol,
Oh,
the the big circles,
Stanton
on
Drew
Sheridan and Neil. Now that has a very old church right next to it, so
does, yeah.
they're on the sites. They're very close to them. Now, as a continuation, it depends really. The thing is with the continuation is that like a lot of those sites were used a long time before Christi, they've been last used for what we know anyway, a long time before Christianity came along. So does this suggest that they instinctually knew there was something there that the locals had forgotten, or were there local cults that
Mm.
still used the circle in their local rituals, even though it wasn't never written down or never spoken about? We don't know, but definitely I think it's not it's like instead of tapping in, which they did, I think the main thing was they were probably already spiritual centers for the community.
Yeah,
And so it was
yeah.
just everyone gathered on it. You know, pagans tend to be tolerant. So the Christians probably said, well, everybody's coming here on the solstice. Do you mind if we build a little Christian settlement here for Christian? They would probably said, yeah, no problem, come along. And that's
And then
how
it
they
built
became.
up from there. Because
Yeah, and
Johnson,
you can actually see how some crosses in Ireland, very common, is a very interesting one up in Glencolin, Killen, Donegal, that they were originally standing stones that were reshaped into the shape of crosses. You see that an awful lot.
yes, yeah, oh God, yeah.
In Ireland, Scotland, and Cornwall and Wales, that's very common to see what was once a standing stone now being carved into a. And the Vikings did the same in the north. They put runes and their own Nordic legends on top of standing stones that were probably used by a proto,
There's
a
another
proto.
wonderful one called Old Tom on Bodmin Moor near the Hurleys. Wonderful
Yeah,
old stone, which has obviously been a stone, obviously been a megalith that's been
yeah.
adapted. There's one in North Wales as well. I can't remember the name of it. No, it's Kifan, Stone of Kifan, whatever that
There's
is.
there's one there's one in Ireland in County Kildare. The name escapes me now, and it's also hard to find. But there's a recumbent standing stone with carving, quite complex carvings on it, built into the wall of an old church. It's actually built into the church. So even when the Christian worshippers were going there, they could see the
Oh
ancient
yeah.
in the from the inside of the church. The church is in ruins now, but it was destroyed by Henry VIII during the dissolution of the monasteries. But the stand there's also a phenomenal one in Holy Island in County Clare on the River Shannon. They've actually built a little church over either a stone. It's either a stone circle or it's a court cairn. But if they actually built a Romanesque architectural structure direct to enclose like a box around the megalith. And I can't think of anything else in the world like that, where a little special church was built just for the megalith.
They're
And that's
in Portugal, aren't they?
yeah. That's they make churches out of the megalith. This
Mm.
one is completely enclosed.
I'll
It's
tell you.
in a box
So
inside it.
they've made the actual megalith a little chapel.
Yeah, the chapel is built around it. I presented the thing at when I did Megalithomania a couple of years ago, and people nearly gasped. They couldn't believe it.
Wow.
It was on there about my round towers discussion, but the picture of the architect the archaeologist drawing there is a small stone circle encapsulated in a small chapel inside it.
Wow. There's one in There's one in Brittany called the Seven Sisters, and it's been a chambered tomb, and you can go in to the side chapel, which is still the chambered tomb, and they've got a little altar under it. And if you go inside the church to the right hand side, the huge area at the right hand side, which is the capstone of it. So
Right, right.
yeah, I'll try and dig a photograph out. We go there on the New Year to it usually. But so what I'll do, yeah, I'll try to drag it out. It's amazing to see. A beautiful little church right in the middle of nowhere in Brittany, And yeah, it is a chambered tomb with an extension, if you know what I mean. It's fantastic. So yeah, when they do it, and there's going back to that idea of continuation of usage. Stanton Drew is known as the weddings, isn't it?
Yes. A
And I know
frozen.
people that have been there and actually done hand fastings.
Yeah.
So if that's continued its use, now there's a church where you get married. So maybe there was no, maybe it was just literally a continuation. This is where we get married. We're now going to do it in a Christian church. We'll put the church there.
Well, those stones of Stanton Drew are very distinctive. They're not. They're that red. They're that red stone
Yeah,
that
huge. Yeah.
they look like they were once faces. So many of them, like they were carved heads, and they've been weathered away by thousands of years of rain. They've almost looked like
Yeah,
they feel incredibly ancient.
I love the one at the back with the smaller circle, but with the really huge stones.
Oh, yes, yeah.
There's the other one, and that's the best one, isn't it? Fantastic.
And there's always ravens around. Whenever I go there's always ravens around. Like it adds to the atmosphere of the place.
And it must have been a lot different because from aerial photographs, they found post holes, didn't they? Hundreds of post holes in the big circle. The huge circle is absolutely massive, one of the biggest in the country. And they found literally hundreds of concentric circles, which probably were for wooden poles at some time. So whether there was a roof on it or otherwise, I don't know, why would you have poles?
Just in like a maze, it would have been incredible complexity.
Mm. Well, Rupert Sosting says it was a place where you went to practice, um, what is it, hunting. So you'd have to hide one and put animals in there.
I wouldn't agree with that.
Well, that's his idea, yeah. He's going to have a book about it soon. It might have been slightly tongue in cheek when he said it.
You got a forest for that. What do you need to put all that?
You don't need to build your own forest. That's true. Sorry, Rupert. But yeah, we might have been a bit. I think he was a bit tongue in cheek when he said that.
Oh well, everyone's entitled to their opinions, but yeah,
of course they are. Of course they are. Yeah, because I think he's writing a book at the moment, and where he's concentrating on the use of henges and causewayed enclosures. Whether they were trying to, he loves to look at it from a totally different point of view from the way that I see it, really. But he's trying to say, is it somewhere where you would keep animals, but you were, I don't know, that sort of thing. But it'll be interesting to see what he comes up with, really, when he finally does.
Yeah, well, that's the mainstream academic thing in Ireland is all the rats, the enclosed circle enclosures.
Yeah,
So
yeah, what we call henges, yeah.
they had a hole in the middle to keep, but some of them don't make any sense because they have things like there's a huge one up in County Roscommon that way, and enormous one, and it's got all kind of definite alignments on it. So it was just an animal pen. Why would it have these specific alignments cut through channels and things like that?
Why Thornborough? But it's I mean, to me, the way I see it now is because you travel around. If you travel around a lot, and I've been doing this traveling around megaliths now constantly for 20 years, you get an idea, you get a pattern building in your mind, and I see it as the early thing was the Gorseth, where you have a meeting place on the horizon. Sorry, on the wherever, a meeting place where people would just meet and do whatever they did, speak or go pass the news on. And next to those, you built an ancient site. When they started building ancient sites in the agricultural revolution, you'd build a stone circle, and then they would have a procession way. They would build the avenues like you get at Avebury. And I think this was something that was right across Britain, because I've seen them at Avebury. I've seen one on the Erswale Plateau, which is the Devil's Arrows, which lead right up to the Thornborough Henges. They go through 2 or 3 henges, like the Houghton Henge, the Canna Henge, and then to the massive triple henge at Thornborough, which is aligned on Orion's belt. So that is a definite processional way. There's one at Shap, isn't there, which is nearly more or less gone, which would have been one of the wonders of the world where you have a
Yep.
stone circle, Kemp Howe, and a 70 feet wide avenue going up to
Yep.
Scull Hill, where there was a chambered tomb once. Most of it's gone now, but it's in memory. It's in written
Yep.
memory. And then Mabrahenge and King Arthur's Round Table, you can see those a processional way between those. That's in Cumbria. So I like the whole idea of like when we grew up in this area, the local church had the Rose Queen, and the Rose Queen would go to the church and she would be made Rose Queen for the year. And then we would get on, there's a flat back, we don't do it anymore, I don't think, flat backed trucks. Yeah, and they'd all make the trucks up, and we'd go on a procession. We'd drive around the roads, and then we'd end up at the church hall where we'd have a party. Now, things don't come from nowhere, so it just
No.
seems to me that this is something that we're looking at when we've got a stone circle, a processional way, and a chambered tomb at the end.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the processional way is there's not many in Ireland. I can't think of, there's one at Tara, but that's in Tara. But they don't have these cross-country processional ways like, well, not that I can find, not like that you have in England. They seem to be, and it's also in Brittany as well, but they seem to be specifically a very well what we now call England in that part of the world.
Mm.
Like the
Yeah,
one,
yeah. I mean, I've said before, and I think that Britain, the islands that we now call Britain Islands, were, well, we've said time and time again, that we're a place of pilgrimage from Europe. Because you don't really see these things on the Mediterranean islands. You see chambered tombs and that sort of thing, but it's as if we have that thing specifically here.
Ritualistic in structures are built in this
Yeah,
part. And if you take the map of Europe, and I remember explaining this to Carol Moore years ago to Maria Wheatley, and it was also one of these magic moments because I said to myself, I was talking about Jack Roberts, who wrote, or remember I showed the book last week. He was the guy who worked with Martin Brennan and the Star and the Stones. He walked into Carol Moore as I was telling this to Maria Wheatley. It was just this weird synchronistic thing. But if you take the map of Europe as it is, with Britain and Ireland here on the Atlantic, and you turn it on, because remember, to them, north, south, east, west didn't really mean anything other than the solar alignments. If you turn it on its side like that, Britain and Ireland are no longer on the extremity of Europe, they're right in the center of it.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
the Mediterranean, you have Spain, Portugal down here, Scandinavia here, France, Holland, part of the world there. And it's in the middle of a kind of a secondary Mediterranean on it, so, and it's not, suddenly it's not far away, it's in the middle of everything.
And they're right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, and we only think up down because of our maps, but to the
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. There's no
yeah,
reason why they can't be moved, can there? It doesn't make it any less true.
if you look at all maps of Britain and Ireland, they're usually on their sides, on the sheets of paper.
And you can do it on if you on Google Maps, can't you? All you have to do is click the corner and it'll turn it round.
Yeah, that's what, and that's it does. It changes everything. Then suddenly we're in the middle of the world, not at the extremes end of it.
And so that's our Atlantis story.
There you go. That's the perspective, and there would have been all kinds of land available to cross over into these islands from Europe. And when the sea levels rose, they were all sunk. So there's your Atlantis story.
Sea levels rose with so then you've got Doggerland which disappeared, and you've got the English Channel which disappeared.
And the link, the walkway between Donegal and Scotland is gone.
And across to the Isle of Man, the whole lot.
Yeah.
But we've done an hour.
Yeah.
So shall we call it a day for today? Because we could carry on just chatting away here for the whole day, couldn't we? But probably better we don't.
Maybe for other shows.
Yeah, I've got more to say. Hopefully we'll get into the Cathars or something next. So
yeah.
Just don't forget, folks, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel so I can build it up. And so this will be on my channel and also copied onto Thomas's playlist later on. So we'll happy Christmas to everybody and happy solstice. I know we're not particularly members of the Christian faith, but I'll take anything at the moment.
Well, a happy Yule and Christmas or whatever it is, yourself, Neil, and everyone. And also on Christmas Day at 6 p.m. Irish time, UK time, I'm putting out a Velocity of Now show, which is more sort of my banter show with the comedy sketches and everything like that on it. And kind of a philosophical review of the year, but it'll be done in a adult language, but it'll be done in a positive style. I'm not going to see 2020 as a disaster. It was a challenge and we all overcame it. And that's what we should always.
Absolutely, we did. Yeah. Yeah.
We triumphed in the end.
Of course we did. And we'll even triumph even more next year.
Like these conversations, like me and you became friends, and like these conversations we have, it opened up a new streams of creativity in different ways for all of us. We were challenged and we rose to the challenge.
Of course we did. We always will.
Yep.
So happy Yule, happy Christmas, happy
Okay,
solstice. See you next week.
We'll see you again after the new year.
After the new year. Okay.
Okay, bye.